Good morning, good evening, good night, wherever you are. This is Dr. Lana. Welcome back to Lana's Little Things with me, Dr. Lana, specialist dermatologist, talking all things on living agelessly, bridging generational gaps, entrepreneurship, just life itself, family caregiving. You know how that goes. And we're continuing. We've got one final day in November, and we've talked about men's health issues all month. So we started off with prostate health, and then we had an interview with Mr. Lashley, who's a pharmacist, who gave us his own personal story and journey. And we encouraged all of you gents to know your PSA, know what your prostate state is, know what your urinary health and general health is like, and then we went into another hush hush topic, so to speak, of mental health. Hmm. And that for men and women, there is still a stigma, there is still fear, there is still shame. And we really want to open this discussion. So last week, I spoke about mental health, those who are at risk, how, as a friend or family member, you can look at signs such as social withdrawal or substance abuse, and then how you can bring up a topic generally and find your own community and seek help for your friends or family members because we're all in this together. You always hear me say that. So, what I want to do, I'm so excited to welcome you to part two of our mental health in our November series for men. And I'm welcoming clinical psychologist, Mr. Krishnan Hurdle. Now, Krishnan, if I were to give you his entire bio, we'd probably be here for the entire session. So I'll just be brief and say he's clinical psychologist, trained in not just the basics of psychology, but also in hypnotherapy. He also does children's health, yes, men's health, women's health, childbearing, painless childbearing. Interesting, because I know most of you ladies are the ones who are listening to this. However, Krishnan, I've known him for quite some years, and I find his manner is very uh, calming. He has a demeanor that makes you want to talk to him. And so I know for sure that he's had several, I've referred several male patients to him, clients, and he's also has his own genres he speaks about. So I'm so happy to welcome Krishnan to our forum, and he will be talking and joining, leading the discussion really, so that you don't have to hear me all the time. He'll be leading the discussion on men's mental health issues. Older men, yes, but this is whole of November, so we got one day left. So welcome, Chris Nan. Take it away.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Husbands. It is a pleasure being here with you. I am always honored when I have the opportunity to have a professional conversation with you. And also, as I am back here in Barbados, since I have been working overseas, it's good to be back home. Good to be back home on vacation, especially. I have been seeing some clients, and as a matter of fact, I find it very interesting that since I've been here for these 4 weeks, persons who don't even know I'm here, they have been calling or messaging to book appointments. So it's been not filling up, but things have been happening. So there definitely is a demand for my services here in Barbados.
There definitely is. And we miss you. So we obviously are very happy to have you back here with us for however little time we can. And those who, you know how you guys, men to men, will talk. So I'm gonna let the floor open to you so that you can talk to the gents, old and young, on what you have found, especially for in terms of mental health from with males, older males, younger males, anything specific, any advice you'd give, and any concerns that you have, especially in our, well, worldwide, yes, but you know, our Caribbean society as well is where you specialize in. But you know, is it true that men are men wherever they are? So you can just let us know what you've found and what you would recommend for us.
Okay, well, I work in another Caribbean island, and however, I did my master's in the UK. And I also have clients from Canada, Switzerland, and a few in Trinidad as well. And I find it interesting that, yes, we find similar trends where women are more willing and ready to to engage in medical and mental health services. Men are always less reluctant, or more reluctant, less willing to engage in medical services and mental health services. You also find that there's a level of ego which says that if you get help, then you are seen as weak or you're seen as inadequate. So I find that that seems to be a major issue with regard to men reaching out for help. Because whether it's mental health or medical health, the physical health, men tend to see reaching out is all of it is help. So men see it as reaching out for help, and if I have to reach out for help, then I'm weak. Then I may be seen as inadequate. And we want to definitely work on some of those stigma and some of those resistance or reluctances that men tend to face. So those are challenges that men definitely that we want to encourage men to work on.
And what are the more common types of mental health issues? We're not going into the huge topics such as schizophrenia and so on. We are really coming down to the grassroots things that you see more commonly. Is it depression? Is it aggression? Is it unresolved issues from childhood? Is it mainly provide as men as providers or women, as they say, bombarding them for being providers? What have you found is are some of the main mental health concerns that you have with your clients?
Yeah, so the spaces I've been in here in Barbados and we are working now, I find that we men tend to struggle with anxiety and depression. And anxiety and depression are the big two anyway, because coping is about coping and adjusting in different situations as challenges come, whether those challenges be financial, relationships, um, you know, feeling a sense of fulfillment, feeling a sense of usefulness. There's the stresses that would occur, and then being able to adjust to them causes some level of angst, which can develop into different types of anxiety. And then, of course, depression. If a person is under the weather or feels somewhat, when I say under the weather, if they're not able to adjust in their situation and they feel overwhelmed, then they can begin to, as we say, take on, internalize, and ruminate on their challenges. But then, of course, there are the biological challenges where the neurotransmitters and the um, biochemicals aren't being produced as they should. And you'd also find cases of severe clinical depression. But generally, I'd say anxiety, different types of depression, and of course, there's conduct disorder, especially in young men. Conduct disorder, which speaks to being able to the relationship to authority and the ability to conduct themselves in a reasonable way, which sees them, in having violence, behavioral issues, domestic issues. So conduct disorder seems to be another big topic with relation to men in our society.
Wow. Is I'm curious then. Is that like a learned behavior, or is this coming from the society or from families? Like, where did a teenager like learn this? Or is it the older persons, older males especially, putting on, or even older females, you could say, putting a pressure on them specifically to act out, so to speak? Or do you find, or is it more communal, like, well, I must do this to fit in?
Well, from the cases that I've worked with, you find that when a person is frustrated and they are not able to express themselves in their environment, where they may feel suppressed and they feel rejected and they feel as though their adults or authority figures aren't paying attention to them, especially with men, you tend to act out physically. So there are behavioral issues which they may face. And women can be emotional, and then women tend to speak among each other. So a woman, a girl, or a young woman, she might not be, life might be difficult, and she may feel like her shoulders against the wall, but she might find a friend that she can speak to. But we find men tend to be more successful in acting out. So you find domestic abuse, aggression, and even suicide in addition to conduct disorder, because these are conditions where the person acts out. They are more prevalent among men than they are among women. And I mean, some of it could be learned behaviors because men, we are socialized. We are socialized how to behave as a man. You're also socialized how to behave as a woman or as a female. So some of it is socialized, but then some of it is also um, just how certain tendencies that we begin to adopt within the context of our families, tendencies that we adopt. Okay, if you are, first of all, you're socialized as a man. So there's certain things you do and there's certain things you don't do. You realize you're stronger than a woman. If she gets to talk and she gets to have her way, as in school, you were told don't hit girls, right? I was having that conversation with a school friend recently. We were socialized to not, we were taught in school not to hit girls. And if they are being given the benefit of the doubt and the girls are allowed to get away with certain behaviors, but you're not, and they talk, they run talk, and they can provoke you, etc. The only thing to do eventually is to act out. And well, we tend to be stronger, the men tend to be stronger. So what do they do to gain their power, to gain their upper hand? They act out. They demonstrate dysfunctional behavior. They may get into use of drugs. They may get into use of gangs. And that is what we call par for the course where men are concerned, because might begins it a lot of it begins in socialization, but some of it is also related to the general biological traits that we share as men as opposed to women.
Oh, right. So we are different species, that's for sure. And even when we do
Mhm.
have our club, we can cry, we can call a friend, and we got our group. But for a man, that's not the thing. You have to, be tough, look tough, act tough,
Mhm.
is what you're saying. So
Mhm.
since we had seen some of those risk factors, then first depression, anxiety, as you said, failure to, I don't know, live up to or look like how you're supposed to look as a
Mhm.
man, then that actually, none of we're condoning anything. We're not condoning bad behavior, but it is what will happen. What happens, as you said, par for the course, which is an expression we use in Caribbean, Barbados, which is just, it kind of runs itself into itself. So the persons who are at risk will be likely those persons who can't ver can't vocalize what they actually feel. Even I know in school for sure, we as girls we're allowed to talk a lot more than the boys just shut down. So it
Yeah.
happens a lot.
And it's accepted that you can be expressive as a girl, emotionally expressive as a girl. But if your feelings aren't being, if you aren't given room to express your feelings socially, is being frowned upon to express your feelings, your frustrations, your even in some cases your weaknesses, that either converts into a antisocial behavior or it becomes channeled inward into the self, and depression or anxieties tend to become the end result.
Then it
So it's important to be able to express appropriately, but express one's feelings. And where those are being suppressed, then it will find a way to get out. As we say in Barbados, pressure bursts the pipe.
and we can you can actually visualize that for sure.
Mhm.
So when a male does seek your help, does call you and you start the session, can you, because we want to know, we want to get into our solutions, our
Mhm.
processes really, so that men can realize, well, nobody's gonna, it's not about being crazy or it's not about losing your mind and it's not about being weak because we all have some vulnerability somewhere. When someone calls, what process can a man expect if he is feeling overwhelmed? And how would you advise him to reach out? How would you advise him to reach out? That's a specific question because we said they're not going to reach out, but there might be somebody who has a phone and you don't, nobody can see where you're on the phone now. How would you advise them to reach out to whoever is helping them? And what is the usual process when they come into the office? Um, how how does a clinical psychologist talk to a male coming with all of these background concerns?
Well, first of all, I am very, very fortunate because I have been seeing an increase in males. I think it's because there are so few male therapists that when a doctor or when someone says, we need a man to work with this guy, we need a male therapist to work with this guy, and they're looking around and they can't find any or the other ones are booked, they refer them to me. And it's been, as I said, I've been fortunate to be able to work with a number of them. And what I tend to do is I commend them for actually their willingness and their courage to even take the first step, to even attend the session, because they must feel as though they must be rewarded, positive and negative and positive reinforcement. So I try to commend them and reinforce the fact that what they're doing is a commendable thing, is a advisable thing, and make them as comfortable as possible. So I let them know, I may let them know, how women learn, how women operate may be different to men, how women act might be different to men. And I wouldn't expect you, the man, to have a session like a woman would. We might talk about things that they're allowed to talk about things that they have an interest in. They're allowed to use their own language. They're allowed to express themselves. As long as they aren't disrespectful towards me, they can express themselves however they want to. And if we want to use metaphors and if we want to use analogies, we can do that. So that's something that I try to do. Additionally, it is, we do the regular intake. So we try to get some background into, the context of their life, growing up and upbringing and family and significant relationships. So we try to get some context and then we get specifically into the problem and we try to find out how to best intervene, how to best get started on the issue. So generally, it doesn't the approach is different. The approach is different because it's a man, but the process is the same in the sense that we do the intake, we get to understand the problem, and then we get into the solutions. Now, I'm the type of therapist, I'm a solution oriented therapist. So for me, it's not about focusing on the problems and just sticking on the problems. It's about what can we do to address them, whether they need to learn how to adjust, whether they need to learn how to manage, or if it is possible to overcome the challenge, to get over the challenge, to get past the challenge, we'll work on that. So we let them know what the options are, and we begin.
It's so interesting you should say that because I have a very good friend who actually is a younger male and has said that from during the years, when I say younger, I mean like not 60s. So,
Mhm,
30s, 40s, that sort of thing. I said for ages, whenever you go to, they found out going to a therapist, they end up just talking about problems, as you said, end
mhm,
up feeling even more frustrated and I guess less heard and just more more helpless when they finish the
mhm,
session than when they started the session.
mhm,
Because there is talk therapy, but for male, I guess that is unusual. So if they talk, you talk and talk and talk and talk about the problem. talk about the background, talk about what happened, talk about how you felt, talk about how sad it was, how awful it was, how angry you were, and or are. And then they come out feeling the same. So how how can you prevent that? Because that seems to be more than how do you do it? Because that seems to be more the norm than the exception. You seem to be the exception. So how do you actually then transition from um problems to here's what we can do about it? Do you have not telling out your trade secrets, but do you have one or two methods that you found work?
Well, just my whole approach to life is being pragmatic. Actually, quite interesting. I was a very philosophical and, if you want to say, a theoretical person years ago, and I went through a process of my own where came to a point where I had to recreate myself and redesign my life. And I very much interested in finding solutions. So being a pragmatist or being very practical is always my approach to situations. And we, first of all, is important to be clear about what the problem is. So that's where we need to talk about it. Sometimes we need to understand what the process that led towards the problem, but we don't stop there. And we always let them know that there is a reason why we're trying to find this information. Thinking each session is important to because therapy is something that can last a while. We're talking about sometimes these are chronic issues or issues that people have been dealing with for a long time. So we wouldn't expect that they can be resolved in one or two sessions. But in each session, you want them to be able to hold on to some kind of some nugget, some practical thing that they can do to understand, to feel like they're making progress. And that's why I say to all my clients, any progress is good progress. So finding some way to give them something to hold on to, something practical that they can begin to do or change is important for each session.
Hmm. So is that like what, painting the house or washing the car or fixing the
It
driveway? I
depends.
think what
It depends on what they've come for. So if they've whatever they come for, we want make one step. Some sessions it might be two or three steps, two or three strategies. We want to make one step every session towards feeling a little different about the situation, approaching the situation differently, changing their mindset or changing their behaviors. And in psychology, there's always that interplay between thoughts, feelings, and behavior. So we want to take one step in either of those directions in terms of their thoughts, in terms of their feelings, something that can change how they feel about the situation, or in response to situations that happen to them, or how they respond, how they behave differently. So we want to take one step in those directions, whatever the situation may be.
so do you recommend journaling and writing down like what happened that day or what happened with the generally or just what happened when they responded? As
Again, it depends. Different people, different strokes for different folks.
Mhm,
I do encourage journaling, but it's not something that everybody may always feel disciplined, feel capable of doing consistently.
mhm,
So I let them, if it's someone who may not be oriented to writing a lot, they can do voice notes.
mhm.
And even when they do make these journal entries or journal posts or whatever you want to call them, they can do it daily or they can do it when events occur. They can do it when there's a success, they can do it when there's a failure or when a situation happens. So there are different approaches to journaling. It doesn't have to be a daily process.
Okay. So, say someone, okay, as you said, anxiety is the most common, which will obviously affect sleep, affect appetite, affect exercise. What's I mean, different things will work with different people, but what have you found has, is of those is something that you'd recommend for the gents to do, specifically for the gents to do?
I think one of the things that men don't do well is slowing down. They don't face themselves very easily. So spending quiet time, pausing to think about situations, being aware, mindfulness and awareness practices. But it's also recognized that exercise can be helpful in managing certain conditions. So I always promote exercise, obviously diet as well, but slowing down and meditating, reflecting, practicing awareness is something that I tend to encourage, especially for men, because they tend to be so externally focused. We want to bring them inside to be able to face themselves and confront the situation.
Face dragons.
Yes,
All right, for sure. No, so because men are doers, as we always hear. Women are
right.
feelers, men are doers. So
Hmm.
for a man, it must be I must do something.
Hmm.
And feeling is girly. So again, we come back to it's
Getting
not
into their
a male
feelings, touching
thing.
base with their feelings.
Right.
Mhm.
So getting in touch with your feelings is for everybody, it is not girly. It is actually feedback. Or what would you call
It's true. What I usually say is people say that men are emotional. No, men are emotional. This is what I say. I say women are feely. They're very feely. So they're perhaps more in touch with a wider range of emotions. Men definitely, however, men are more aware of the stronger ones, like anger and frustration and victory, success. They feel those very strongly. But being in touch with some of the more finer or subtle emotions is important. So things like fear and jealousy and you know, sadness and just being more in touch with the range of emotions. That's something that I always encourage so that they can expand their emotional vocabulary and they can respond differently to different situations.
it? And so, and then they come back to you having given whatever scenario, and again, as you said, they should be commended and encouraged, and everybody who doesn't need encouragement. And that fuels the next time you realize, oh, that behavior actually did work. Oh, talking about this did actually work. Acting out wasn't great because you actually feel worse than when you act out. So
Mhm.
slowing down, we might not say maybe taking a deep breath and going into your meditation and lying down and whatever. But that sounds real girly even to me. But I'm a full meditation girl where it comes to that kind of time and doing that. But from man then, um, just take a little time. Um, Maybe instead of rushing on the coffee or rushing on the food, take time to just chew your food a little more slowly, drink a little more mindfully, as you said.
Mm.
It doesn't have to be done a particular way. It just has to be in a way that it takes courage, though, Miss Krisnan, to face your dragons, you know.
Yeah,
Um,
it does.
and so that can be maybe you can say for the gents, it is actually manly to face the dragons. So that's what men of all times used to do. They used to slay the dragons, not the women. So
One of my approaches that I tell men, one
mhm,
of the ways I frame it is that, quite frankly, working with a counselor or doing therapy is like having a personal trainer. The same way that you would allow yourself to be subjected to the commands and the instructions of the personal trainer, or how guys in the army they allow themselves to be subjected to the commands or the instructions of the sergeant or the drill leader.
yeah.
That's this. Well, you don't be in charge. The therapist is in charge of them, but you have the opportunity to allow yourself to grow and to become a better version of yourself by following the guidance of a counselor or working with a counselor, because it's not just following the guidance, it's actually a feedback process. And that's important to know. You're not being told what to do. We're working together on where you go. And you direct the session. I tell clients that all the time. They direct the sessions in terms of they determine what we address. They might not determine every single exactly how the session goes, but
Right.
what issues we address is determined by them.
Okay, I love that idea of personal trainer. You could, use that. So that sounds like doing and feeling together. So
Mhm.
which is a win-win. Well, I can't believe we are almost out of time, but I think what I gathered from this is yes, gents, feel free to reach out. Man to man is great. And the session is not girly girly, but you do have to face your feelings, face your dragons, which takes courage, which makes you feel even more in charge and even better about yourself. And we girls love that. We love to know that we can lean on you. We love to know that we can rely on you. And we love you to show your vulnerability. That actually attracts women to men. So thank you so much, Krishna, for, I mean, just those little pearls of little things that you can do. Slow down, take your time, think about yourself, face the dragons. Where can we find you?
Okay, so I can be found. I have an Instagram page, Insight Consulting Caribbean. Insight, ANSIGHT, Consulting Caribbean. And you can also email me at insightconsultingbb@gmail.com. I don't at this point have a website. That's something that is a work in progress, but they can always email me or they can find me on Instagram.
Thank you so much. We enjoyed the session, and then help is out there. So from Dr. Lana and Mr. Hurdle, from my heart to yours. Bye bye.
Bye.